Okay. Hey, it's been a while since I made a video. A week ago, I was traveling for a couple of days. I was at an event over the weekend. Great event called Bard's Fest. Had a great time with some fantastic people. I met some people there that I had only conversed with, and actually conversed with quite a bit, but I'd never met in person. So, like, I met Doc Pete Chambers for the first time in person there. I met Ivan Rakelin. I met Carolyn Rocco. I met Corey Terry. So, I mean, I just met some fantastic people that I was aware of and that I had communicated with, and even communicated with quite a bit. I had never had the opportunity to meet them in person, and I met them last week at this event. So, anyway, that was great, but it's been a while since I've done anything in terms of making a video, and something happened or something came out in the last day or so that I wanted to talk about because I think it's an interesting topic, and it's a topic. The reason that it's interesting is because it has to do with certain values that we hold dear, but what do you do when some of those values are in conflict? Okay. So what am I talking about? Nick Kupper, who's an Air Force veteran. Some of you may be familiar with him. He's been pretty outspoken about what happened with DOD's unlawful vax mandate. But Nick Kupper put this out on social media a day or so ago. He said, tens of thousands of service members lied with fake vax cards to bypass Secretary of Defense's illegal mandate. Those deceitful members are still serving, while tens of thousands of honest members were forced out for having integrity. Which group would you rather have serving your country? All right, I'm going to read that again because this is fantastic, right? Tens of thousands of service members lied with fake vax cards to bypass Secretary of Defense's illegal mandate. Those deceitful members are still serving, while tens of thousands of honest members were forced out for having integrity. Which group would you rather have serving your country? All right. I love it. Why? Because it's controversial, right? So people are going to talk about it, and people have talked about it. So I think I was tagged in some of that went out I think you put it out on a couple social media platforms. And so people were kind of responding, and people were, people have opposing views on that. Maybe opposing is not the right word. There is some nuance at play here. So what do I think about fake vax cards, and what should we think about it, just, in general? So first of all, what's a fake vax card? So a fake vax card, simply stated, would be a card that you use to misrepresent your vax status in order to achieve something that you would not be able to achieve if people knew that you were unvaxxed, right? So that might be keeping your job. It might be the opportunity to travel if you would be unable to travel if people knew that you were unvaccinated. So you produce a card, the card says you're vaccinated when you're not, therefore you're able to travel. In the military, were there people who produced fake vax cards? Yes, of course there were. And some of that you can just write off as being human nature. When you put people into a set of circumstances where you are almost requiring them to do something that is against human nature, people are not going to go along with that. Now, what do I mean? If you back people into a corner where you threaten their livelihood, or their ability for them to provide for their families, and they're going to find ways to get around that. And if they can get around that by lying, then people are going to lie. Now, is it morally or ethically acceptable to lie for self-preservation? Hey, listen, this is one of those things that's been debated forever, and it's going to be, situation dependent. A lot of people during the whole lockdown situation in 2020, 2021, people would draw historical analogies to totalitarian regimes such as the Soviet Union, or, late 1930s, early 1940s Nazi Germany. Do I think that those analogies are appropriate? Yes, I do. However, I don't think that every conclusion that was drawn from those analogies was sound, because I do think that within those historical comparisons, I do think that there were some ways in which those analogies were used that was less apt than people thought that they were. Okay, what do I mean by that? Think about the situation, which again has been discussed in plenty of philosophy classes or other situations in which somebody might posit a moral or ethical dilemma that you might find yourself in order to then draw a conclusion as to what you should do and whether or not that would be moral or ethical. So, the Gestapo comes to your house and says, "Do you have people hiding in your attic?" You do have people hiding in your attic. You say no, because if you were to tell the truth, then not only would you be putting those people at risk, you would be putting yourself at risk, because obviously you were harboring these individuals in your residence. Most people would say at that point, it is moral and ethical to lie to these individuals, which represent a totalitarian regime, which are affecting atrocities on certain people, and that by lying, you not only preserve yourself, but you preserve the individuals that you are harboring, in your attic. So, and the reason that this is an interesting case is because it's not just you who would be in trouble because you're hiding people, but it's also those individuals that you are hiding. So it's not just about protecting yourself from being arrested at that point and carried off, but it's about ensuring that these presumably innocent people that are being targeted, that they are not detained and carried off and then end up in a camp somewhere. So that's kind of the all of that is premised in this hypothetical situation that is often used in a philosophy class or somewhere else where you might be discussing these types of moral dilemmas. What does that have to do with a fake vax card? Well, this is where I think people can use analogies that are appropriate and yet still draw some conclusions that are unsound. If my livelihood is threatened because I'm unvaxxed and I produce a fake card that says I am vaxxed, how is that similar and or different from the situation that I just stated, the hypothetical situation with people hiding in the attic and the Gestapo comes to your door? Well, there are some similarities. One is you have a totalitarian regime propped up by evil people that is operating in a way that is, depending on the exact case we're talking about, clearly immoral and unethical, probably also unlawful. Now, immoral, unethical, and lawful are not always gonna happen at the same time. Like, just because something is lawful doesn't mean it's moral or ethical, right? However, with what happened to us the last couple of years, most of that was unconstitutional, as well as clearly evil. Clearly, based on lies, etc. So in that regard, it is maybe similar to what would happen in our hypothetical Gestapo situation. But here's where there is a very clear difference. In the hypothetical situation from Nazi Germany, if the Gestapo comes to my door, I don't work for the Gestapo. I am lying to people who are part of an evil organism that are carrying out evil acts. But I'm not part of that. Now, I may be in this case, like let's say I'm a German citizen. So these people to some degree are operating, in my name, but that doesn't mean that I condone it or support it or endorse it in any way, right? But with the situation with the fake vax card in the military, right? I'm part of that organization. Now, I'm not equating the United States military to the Gestapo. I'm not making that direct link. There are some similarities. I mean, there just are, right? Was every member of the Gestapo a totally evil, depraved person? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but what they were doing on the whole, yes, evil. I'm not in any way saying that every single person in the United States military is an evil, depraved person. I am saying, and I have said, that the people running the organization are acting wildly outside the bounds of law. And some of them clearly have not just criminal designs in mind, but designs in mind that are inimical to everything that we hold dear in this country. So for the individuals who created fake vax cards, it's not like the first situation, you against the Gestapo. It's that you're part of this organization that is doing this, and you kind of protect yourself in a way while remaining part of that organization. Okay. So Nick Kupper, in the tweet that he put out or whatever, he's drawing a comparison between those that created vax cards, fake vax cards, and then those who just stood up and said, hey, I'm not going along with this. Okay. The group that he does not mention at all are the people who just willingly went along with this. Okay. So let's not attribute to him a comparison that he did not make, because this is something that I see people do all the time. Some sort of comparison is made between, A and B, and then people in their minds, when they hear that comparison, they automatically draw some sort of relationship between, rather than between A and B where the comparison was made, they draw some sort of relationship between A and C or B and C. And it's like, hey, that's not the comparison that was made. So in the tweet as it was put out, or the other social media posts, the people who willingly went along with this are not mentioned. So he's not comparing fake vax card group with those who just willingly went along and, took the shots. That's not the comparison that he's making. He's making a comparison and really a contrast more than a comparison between fake vax card group and then the like the more bold standouts, those who more boldly resisted, and said, I'm not going along. I'm going to tell you that I'm not going along, and this is why I'm not going along with this. And he's saying one of those two groups has more integrity than the other. We're not talking about those who just went along with all of this. Okay. We're talking about those who resisted in some capacity, but for one of the two groups that resist. So let's already give them some credit. Now, I may be putting words here in Nick Kupper's mouth that he didn't say, but I'm giving you my opinion now on this. Fake vax card group still resisted to some degree, but they did it deceptively, and they only did it to a certain point, and their resistance is almost undercut by the fact that, like, nobody knows they resisted, or very few people know that they resisted, and it's only the people who know that they have a fake vax card, which means the resistance is not super helpful. And then those who stood up and said, what you're doing is wrong, it's unlawful, it's unconstitutional, it makes no sense in terms of health, and I'm not going to go along with it. And I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to go along with it because I'm going to openly resist. Okay. To me, those two groups of people are very different. I give them credit for resisting, but one of those groups of people, just to put it bluntly, has much bigger balls than the other group. Like just there's no comparison, because one group was concerned first and foremost about self-preservation. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but they had no commitment, or they had far less commitment to what is right. It was more about, how do I protect my health, which is important, and my career, also important. I don't care about anybody else's health. I don't care about anybody else's career or what happens to them. Or, hey, I'm getting a fake vax card. If other people want to protect their health or their career, let them get a fake vax card too. I mean, I can understand that. I'm trying to view this as charitably as possible as well, right? But I still think that that is far less courageous than saying, this is wrong, and I'm not going to allow them to get away with this. And if I lose my career, then I lose my career. That group of people just has far bigger balls than the first group. Like, no comparison. So to go to Nick Kupper's point, and again, I'm just going to state this bluntly. I just don't care if this offends you, but the people with the biggest balls have been thrown out of the military, or they chose to leave the military rather than compromise their ideals because they realized that the military is no longer an organization for people with big balls. It's just not. It's just not. It's an organization for people who go along to get along. It's an organization with people whose morals and virtues are situational. Those who had more uncompromising standards, they left, or they're the ones who have remained in service, but they remained in service and fought this the whole way through, and they made it to the point where the the National Defense Authorization Act was implemented, which brought about the repeal of the mandate. I mean, there are still some people like that who are still in. They did not go along with this. They never buckled. They fought this all the way through, and they made it to that point where the repeal went into effect earlier this year. But those people that I'm referring to, those are not fake vax card people. Those are people who put their careers at risk because even though they fought, and yes, they may have put in for religious accommodation requests, they did that openly. They challenged what was happening openly. They did not pretend to go along. So some people have said, hey, when you're in a situation like this is war and deception is a part of war. I've heard a lot of people say that. I think that's kind of true. But again, I think we are like that notion is true. But I think people are, again, they are drawing conclusions that aren't as apt as they think they are in the analogical comparisons that they're creating in their mind. So let's go back to our Gestapo situation where we've got people that are hiding in the attic. There is a clear oppositional relationship between, if it's me, right? So it's me, I got people in my attic. The Gestapo shows up to my door. There's a clear oppositional relationship between the Gestapo and me. Now, I'm not openly opposing them. In this case, I am lying to them. But in a way, they are clearly my enemy. Okay? And I am engaging in deception. Yep, to preserve myself, but perhaps first and foremost to preserve the people that I got hiding in the attic. With the fake vax card group, that 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 oppositional framework is not there to the same degree, because it's not me versus the people like my supervisors within the military who are coming to me and telling me to get vaxxed, because I'm still part of this military. I'm part of that group. It would be almost like in our first comparison, if I were part of the Gestapo, you know? So that's where I think that analogy breaks down to some degree. If you feel that if you feel that you had to create a fake vax card, then why are you still in the military? If you felt that your rights were being violated, if you felt that this was unconstitutional, if you felt like this was unlawful, if you felt like this had nothing to do with health, why the hell are you still in the military? Why did you pretend to go along with it? So, first of all, thank you for not getting the shot. And I congratulate you for being smart enough and enough of a critical thinker to not go along with it. I will give you the credit that you are owed, for sure. But why not go all the way? Why not resist all the way? And I'm not asking you just to be a martyr for martyr's sake, but why pretend to go along and then create the illusion that they had far more success than they did? Because if you had stood up like other people, frankly, with much bigger balls, if you had stood up like they stood up, we could have stopped this mandate. I've said this over and over and over again. If my peers, who are all cowards, I mean, maybe not all isn't all, but virtually all cowards. So my peers, lieutenant colonels, commanders at that level, battalion commanders, if they weren't virtually all cowards, we could have stopped this. I've said this so many times. We could have stopped it. If enough of us, and I don't mean 50% plus one, I mean, I don't know, 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 6. If we had stood up and said, no, you can't do this, we're not going along with this, we could have stopped it. But there were too many people who were uncomfortable with what happened, and they still went along with it, and this still happened. And now, military readiness is in the gutter, moral injury, across every service at every level. And then of course the physical injury and death that has occurred because of these shots that, so many people were coerced into taking. So when I look at my peer group that could have stopped this, because in the collective, virtually everyone just went along with it because they're cowards and because they have, little critical reasoning ability. We didn't stop it. It still happened. And the vast majority of my peers, I mean, I don't know which of them got fake vax cards, but I think that number amongst my peer group is actually probably pretty small. I think most of them just went along with it, took the shots, So I know I'm kind of rambling and I'm all over the place, but fake vax cards, I will give credit where credit is due. Those people were smart enough not to take the shots. And I think that means they did resist to some capacity. But they didn't resist enough. And I'll tell you an old story. It's kind of crude, but it illustrates the point. I'm going to try and tell this without being super crude. So there's a guy with his, his girlfriend or his wife, and they're pulled over on the side of the road. There's something wrong with the car. Let's say there's a flat tire. And the guy doesn't know how to fix the tire. Okay. This is just a story. You can judge that guy however much you want. Doesn't know how to fix the car. Now he's stranded with his wife. A car pulls up beside them. A guy gets out. Hey, what's the problem? So the couple, the man says, yeah, we got a problem with the car, the tire. I can't fix it. We're stranded. So the other guy who just stopped says, hey, I'll fix your car for you, but in exchange, I'm going to sleep with your wife. And so the wife hears that. She's horrified. She's more horrified when her husband agrees to this transactional arrangement. So the husband says, yep, all right, got it, agreed. So the other guy, the guy who stops, fixes the tire, and then he draws a circle on the ground with like a rock in the dirt, draws a circle on the ground, and he tells the husband, stand in this circle and don't move while I engage in this act with your wife. The husband stands in the circle. The other guy, the guy who fixed the car, the guy who stopped and helped him out, engages in this act with the wife, finishes, and leaves. And the wife says to the husband, I can't believe you did that. Like, I can't believe you agreed to that, and then you stood in that circle while this happened. And the husband looks at his wife and says, just so you know, while he wasn't looking, I stepped outside the circle. All right, what does this have to do with our situation at hand? Fake vax card people resisted like this guy who stepped out of the circle. Okay? Yeah. When nobody was looking, they stepped outside the circle, but that was the extent of their resistance. They are cowards. They have contributed to the mess of the situation that we're in, which is akin to a large, collective rape that has happened, writ large across the board. So the story that I just told you, I believe is analogically apt. So just like the guy in our story stepped out of the circle, hey, give credit where credit is due. He resisted in some small capacity. I don't think most of us would say that he resisted enough. Our friends with the fake vax cards are like that guy. They still enabled the writ large rape to occur, and they are to some degree responsible for that. So I agree with Nick Kupper. Do I know people who got fake vax cards? I don't even know. I mean, I assume I do. I mean, people don't necessarily go around and say, hey, I got a fake vax card. They don't necessarily broadcast that. I have heard stories of people who got fake vax cards. And I have mixed opinions on it. Like I said, okay, well, I credit you with being smart enough not to take the shots. Okay. But you're not the courageous person that you think you are. And you are, to some degree, you own in the massive wide-scale moral injury that is plaguing our military. You're not some sort of, grand resistor to the Gestapo that you think you are, because, and again, don't overthink the link that I'm drawing here, but you're kind of part of it, and again, I'm not saying the United States military is the Gestapo. I am saying that the people who kind of ran the Gestapo and the people who are controlling our government and DOD, they're pretty similar. I'm not saying every single American service member is a member of the Gestapo. I'm not saying that. I am saying at some point you have to ask yourself, can I continue to uphold my oath to the Constitution? Can I continue to act in a way that is in accordance with what I believe while being a part of this organization? That's a question you got to ask yourself. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. So I don't know that I explained myself very well. But I'll just leave it at that. And by all means, if you leave some comments, then, let me know what you think. Maybe you don't agree with me. Maybe you think, hey, this is warfare and deception is a part of warfare. And I agree with that. I just think that when we're talking about the situation that we're talking about, I personally think that only goes so far. But anyway, by all means, let me know in the comments what you think about it. I think it's a fascinating topic to talk about because we are in a war and deception is part of that war. So how far do you take it, and who's on what side, and how do you make sure that you're on the right side? You know. So anyway, I do think it is a fascinating topic for discussion, and we got to talk about this stuff for sure. So anyway, sorry it took me so long to get another video out, but I'm glad that we were able to touch on this topic because I do think it's important.